Welcome, will you join us in worship together? The Lord is my shepherd. He brings me to pastures of His grace. He leads me to waters, refreshes my soul in His embrace. I will fear no evil, for I know You are with me. I will fear no evil, Lord, I know You are near. Your goodness and mercy will follow me all of my life, now and forever. Your goodness and mercy follow me all of my life, now and forever. The Lord is my shelter, my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. No harm or disaster could conquer my heart. You are enough, and I will fear no evil, for I know You are with me. I will fear no evil, Lord, I know You are near. Your goodness and mercy will follow me all of my life, now and forever. Your goodness and mercy follow me all of my life, now and forever. Your goodness and mercy will follow me all of my life, now and forever. Your goodness and mercy follow me all of my life, now and forever, now and forever. Oh, now and forever, yes. When I walk through the valley, when darkness surrounds me and all is against me, I will not fear. When I'm lost in the shadow, when I'm caught in the battle, I will not fear. I will not fear. When I walk through the valley, when darkness surrounds me and all is against me, I will not fear. When I'm lost in the shadow, when I'm caught in the battle, I will not fear. Oh, Your goodness and mercy follow me all of my life, now and forever. Your goodness and mercy follow me all of my life, now and forever, now and forever, now and forever, now and forever.
Hey WCC family and friends, so glad to have you checking in with us today. Whether you're watching online live or coming in on demand, whether you're in your living room or watching from your hotel room as you travel, we are super excited that you're with us today. So how about we start with a little bit of good news. So as part of our work with foster children and foster families to care for and to love and serve the most vulnerable people in our city, we've also partnered with some correction facilities where sometimes these parents end up. And just a few days ago, we actually took a team to Santee Am Correctional Facility where we were able to just serve meals to the staff there and love on them and encourage them. We had Chipotle that actually provided the meal for that daytime staff. And then as a church, we also provided the meal for the nighttime team and the graveyard shift. And then we just spent some time loving and encouraging and appreciating the hard work that they do. And they felt so blessed and so loved and so seen and just valued in that moment. And we're able to do things like that because of your generosity and the way you continue to love and value and serve the community. So first, thank you for being a great church that cares about all people. And thank you for being a generous church that's committed to making an impact on those that need love and hope. So I want to encourage you to continue to give and be generous because it's making a difference. You can go to the website, willamette.cc, and then scroll down to Giving Online and to Give Now. Click that button and you can continue to give online. If you're new to checking us out, if you just checked in, someone invited you, hey, we don't expect you to give. We're just glad that you are here and we hope you enjoy the service. Now let me tell you about a few things that are coming up at Willamette this summer. Speaking of serve opportunities, women, we have some great opportunities for you to serve and to make a difference. Through the Know Me Now initiative and through Shepherd's Door, you can sign up and find ways to spread hope and to bring love to the city and those in need. To find out more about that, go to the website and click on Women's Community and sign up to serve. Students, we have a great serving opportunity for you. We have 1 week coming up, Monday through Friday, July 13th through July 17th. That is an opportunity for incoming sophomores through outgoing seniors. It's a chance for you to hang out with some friends, grow in your faith, and to practically be the hands and feet and do kingdom work for those around the city as well. So to find out more and to sign up for 1 week, go to the website, willamette.cc, and click on the student link. And finally, WCC, starting on July 5th, Sunday mornings going forward, we're going to offer prayer stations from 9:30 to 11. You can just drive by if you want, or you can stop and get out. But we will have pastors, people there who would love to pray with you and pray for you. We'll socially distance, we'll keep the masks on, we will be very safe and responsible, but we would love to pray with you. We're going to keep that time open. You just drive up and we will make sure someone's there to pray for you. But now, before we jump into today's message from Off the Map, we're going to join the band and continue to sing.
A thousand songs for 1,000 years will never tire. The Father's ears keep singing. Just keep singing. Light of day and dark of night, through the fire and in the fight, keep singing. Just keep singing. Songs for 1,000 years will never tire. The Father's ears keep singing. Oh, just keep singing. Light of day dark of night, through the fire, and in the fight, keep singing. Oh, just keep singing. Holy, 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 all of earth and heaven sing. Oh, holy, 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 all of earth and heaven sing. He's the Lord, our God, the Almighty One, who was and is to come. He's the Lord, our God, the Almighty One, who was and is to come. He's the Lord, our God, the Almighty One, who was and is to come. He's the Lord, our God, the Almighty One, who was and is to come. Holy, 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 all of earth and heaven sings. Holy, 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 all of earth and heaven sings.
All right, well, welcome to WCC, to BCC, and to our Hope City family, as well as everyone checking in online. So great to have you with us today. So we're in week number 3 of the series we're calling Off the Map, talking about these journeys that we go through that are unexpected in many ways and many times. And today, we're going to talk specifically about that time in the middle, because the middle is where so many people crash and burn, or they begin to spiral. So the middle can oftentimes be the hardest. And I was thinking about this. So I run a little bit, and not because I really enjoy it. It's become more of a discipline for me. But I didn't start running until after high school. Maybe it was even after college before I started to run. So I distinctly remember being in 6th grade and having track and field or outdoor event day, whatever it was called back then. And whenever I was in 6th grade, it wasn't part of middle school, it was its own school. So on track and field day, every student had to choose 2 different events to participate in. And listen, I knew that I was not fast, so I wanted to make sure I didn't do one of the sprints, the 100 meter, the 200 meter. I didn't want to do hurdles because I couldn't jump either, because I knew I would lose those bad. Although in retrospect, I kind of wish I would have done one of those, because it would have been 20, 30 seconds of absolute shame, and then it would have been over. Instead, I chose to do the 3-mile run, right? I don't know if it's a 5K, but 3 miles. And I know some of you that you're watching right now, you're long distance runners or you're marathon runners. And so 3 miles for you is pretty much a warm up. I'm just getting started. But listen, I was in 6th grade. I'm 11. I play sports. I like to play outdoors with friends, but really I just majored in video games and junk food. So 3 miles felt like a really, really long distance. Okay, so on that day, where you started from, kind of on the field, there were lots of kids that were around. So I get there and I start and the gun goes off or whatever and we take off and like I feel like the Flash. I'm just running hard. I'm not even sure if my feet touch the ground for the first minute or two. I feel like Jack from the Titanic. I'm just floating and looking really good while I do it. Okay, when you finish the run and you come to the end, again, you're coming back to the main part of the field. So there are lots of people and none of them are paying attention to us because they don't care. But in my mind, right, I imagine that they're all there waiting for me, cheering. You know, ESPN is going to have a reporter there to get an interview and it's going to be this magical moment. So the finish is also really exciting and can be a lot of fun. So the start of the race, that's really cool and it's a great time. The finish, when you end that, it can be even better. But in the middle, right, after I'd run really hard for the first minute or two, when I get away from the crowd and get away from all the eyes being on me, that's when you start to get tested, right? That's when you start to have doubts and you start to think all kinds of crazy things. My body, about the first 2 or 3 minutes in after going hard, it was just saying no, just shutting down. It wants to stop. Some of you that run long distance at mile 19 or 20 or 21, that's where your body also starts wanting to just power down and stop. You start thinking all kinds of crazy stuff as you're going through that grinding part of the journey. So again, as we talk today, and what we're going to look at in the message is the start, right, when you take off, even into the unknown, and even when you get off the map, that can actually be kind of exciting or invigorating for a season. And whenever you come to the finish line, and whenever you wrap it all up, that can be very rewarding or fulfilling that you survived, that you got through it. But the middle, the thing that we're going to refer to today as the desert, that can be really messy at times, and it can become really hard, and it can feel very difficult. And listen, how we manage in the middle is so critical. How you walk through that hard season. Because listen, we have a God that we call the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and He's the end, but He's also the God that is faithful in the middle. So how we handle the detours, this is what we'll talk about. The detours in life, the desert seasons that we go through really matter so that we get from start to the finish without imploding. And can we just start off and just acknowledge that the first half of 2020 has not been and looked like what anybody expected. We have got off the map that is off the map, right? We didn't see this coming. Could not have prepared for that. I think the betting odds of predicting what this are like 1 billion to 1. So we're wondering, have the end times come? Is this the Antichrist? Can we just get raptured now? But listen, the same God that was faithful in your life in January and back in February, that's the same God that will be faithful in your life going through the season today. And we don't ever want to minimize what it is we're facing. We sure don't want to give the impression we don't take it serious, because we absolutely do. But I also want to make sure we always remember that, listen, God Himself is walking with us through this journey, and He will be with us when we come out on the other side. And listen, that's the promise. That is the lesson that God is trying to teach to His people, to the Israelites, as they go through the desert, as they come from the promised land, or as they come from slavery and they head to the promised land. He's trying to help them understand, listen, trust me and believe in me. Don't give up on me. Stay with me. Let the journey, right? Let the trip you're on complete you and not defeat you, which is what we'll talk about here for the next few minutes. Because, listen, for God's people, for the Israelite people, the mess that they encounter in the middle, the fear, the unknown, the uncertainty, is going to cause them to want to go back to what is familiar. Even though what was familiar for them is slavery, rather than press forward and persevere into a new freedom. Because here's the thing, whenever we feel afraid, we will often crave what is familiar, even if it's not healthy, and even if it may be harmful to you. So that the very thing that they were crying out to God to free them from, like, get us out of this, is the thing they'll want to go back to when the journey gets hard. Because again, it's familiar. And what it does for them is it sends them on this really, really long detour. Because listen, they don't manage the middle well. So they grumble and they complain and they gripe and they whine, and they end up doing 40 years in this cul-de-sac of the desert. Just take another lap and take another lap on what should have been about a 40 days journey. Like, have you ever tried to get somewhere and you had a hard time getting there and you just became frustrated as you kept trying? Our family lived in Dallas for several years, and it is a major, major metroplex. And there are parts of the city where multiple 20-some highways, it feels like, just all converge together, and there's all the time road work that is going on. So I remember trying to actually get to the DMV, which is a place you don't want to go anyhow, but I'm having maps direct me, and I keep trying to take the exit that is telling me, but there's no exit, right? It is road work, I can't get off. And then I try the next one, I can't get off. And finally, it's just rerouting, and I can't get to where I want to get. So this feels like what the Israelites are going through. And listen, when you're in the middle, in the desert, is where our faith often gets tested, so that the desert can become fertile soil for our complaining, or it becomes fertile soil for God's provision, right? Our grumbling, or for God's refining. So let's just look at this story for a little bit, parts of the story, and then I'll give you a couple of takeaways. So what we saw last week, if you caught it, God's people come out of slavery and they go through the Red Sea on their way to the Promised Land. And so God's people, they've been slaves in Egypt for a few hundred years, right? They initially came in when a guy named Joseph got sold into slavery, but God used him to interpret the dream of the Pharaoh, and he rose up in influence and power, helped save the nation. So that Pharaoh actually invited him and his family in to stay. But then as they grew and new Pharaoh came and they forgot about what Joseph had done, well, then the Egyptian people slaved God's people, and they're crying out because they want out of slavery, which leads to God calling a guy by the name of Moses to come and set his people free. Which by the way, Moses didn't want that job, right? Little fun fact for some of you, that many of the men and women in the Bible who God calls or uses or sends on his behalf, they do not want the job or want that deal, right? Jonah, Esther, Joseph, Jeremiah, who's referred to as the weeping prophet, right? He's like, no, please, God, send someone else. And then, of course, God uses them all to be part of a great story. But God goes to Moses and he sends him to tell Pharaoh, let my people go, right? Not Moses' people, not Pharaoh's people, but God's people. Right? I've heard the groaning of my people. I have seen their misery. Let's go get them, man. I'm concerned about them. I'm going to come to their rescue. I'm going to take them from the place of slavery and to the place flowing with milk and honey, the land of promise. And so here's where we read that account in Exodus chapter 3, verse 8, where Moses tells us this. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land and into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Okay, and here's the interesting thing. As you read that text right there, okay, there is no space between God saying, I will bring you out of the place of slavery and I will bring you into the land of promise. So it sounds like very instantaneous, right? Like, beam me up, Scotty. This will be a quick little overnighter and then we'll be there. And then it ends up going much longer. and it becomes much harder and much more challenging than what they expected. And think about this. Egypt, even though it was the land of slavery for God's people, it also flourished. Okay, so Egypt is on the Nile River Delta. So stuff just grew there, man. If you were to look at where they left, God's people leave from on the map, right? Because they're in the desert right now, but where they come out of, it would look very green. So they're slaves, but they're slaves in very fertile soil. And then Canaan, this place promised to their forefathers, this place that God is taking them, it is sometimes referred to as the land flowing with milk and with honey, which that's a pretty cool name, and it also flourished agriculturally. Okay, but where we're going to find God's people in our story today, where we find them now is they're in the middle. So they're not in the fertile soil place where they were at in slavery in Egypt, and they're not yet to the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey. They are in the land between, right, if you will. They are in the desert. And listen, unlike the fertile soil that they found in Egypt or what they would find in the promised land, not much grows in the desert. In fact, our family spent several years in the desert in Las Vegas doing ministry there. And I can tell you for sure, it is hard to grow stuff. It's hard, right, to keep grass, which at the time I didn't mind because I didn't love yard work, although I'm learning to love it now here in Oregon. But there we had desert landscaping, which just meant rocks and cactus. That's all that it was. So there's not much need for upkeep or for maintenance in the desert. However, the desert can be one of the best places for transformational growth to take place in you and in me. It is a place where God will grow you. So the desert can be a place where faith goes to die, or it can be a place where you grow. And I would say that the heart is always in danger as we journey through the desert. Okay, so let's go back and talk about the two things that can happen. First, the desert can become fertile soil for our grumbling and for our complaining. And again, whenever we talk about the desert, we're just talking about the trials and the hard seasons that you go through in life, which of course, for God's people here, it's an actual desert. But it can be any difficult season you're walking through. So the deserts are tough, and I would say this, that most people, or at least many people, are prone to complaining and grumbling just as a general rule, right? And that just gets amplified or like put on steroids whenever you start going through the desert. So again, let's look at the story. God's people come out of slavery. Again, we saw that last week they come from Egypt, they come up to what we call the dead end, right? Which is the Red Sea. So they've got this huge body of water in front of them, and then the Egyptian army coming after them from behind. So God delivers them through the Red Sea, and he crushes their enemy, which, right, you have to imagine, I'm sure they were excited for what God had done, for the way he parted the Red Sea. Maybe they partied a little, had a little celebration, party favors, piñatas, whatever. It was a big moment. I'm sure they even enjoyed getting a change of scenery and heading out into the wilderness and the desert landscaping for a while, because at least they're not in Egypt anymore. But listen, that season didn't last for very long, because here's what we then read in Exodus chapter 16, verse 1. Moses records this: the whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came into the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. So picture this. It has been about a month and a half since they left Egypt and came through the Red Sea. So maybe this is dragging on for a little bit longer than what it is they expected. I remember whenever we started quarantine and COVID, everyone thought, we'll do this for 2 or 3 weeks. We even planned on being back in church by Easter, but now it's been dragging on. Maybe the accommodations are not what they expected, right? So maybe you feel this personally, or with kind of the global pandemic, kids are getting restless and annoying. Maybe the test results or the treatments you're going through, maybe they're not really helping so much. You can't get a haircut. You can't go to graduation. You can't go to the wedding. Maybe what we left behind isn't as bad as what we're moving forward to, right? We're not sure. Maybe God's not good. Maybe we can't fully trust him. This is what they begin to feel. Then watch what we read in the next verse. Verse 2. We read this. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sit around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, but you have brought us out here into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Okay, so listen, let me just talk about me for a moment. I won't even implicate you or make you an accomplice in this. Sometimes I amaze myself at how quickly I can forget God's goodness and his faithfulness and how he's always shown up and provided in the past. Not to mention the cross, right? And not to mention the eternal promise he made. As soon as things start to get a little harder or more difficult than I wanted, and as soon as the trial or the journey lingers a little bit longer than I would like. And you have to imagine God is up in heaven going, hello, like I crushed the most mighty military powerhouse in the world that was chasing after you without even breaking a sweat, right? Like I didn't even have to stretch, didn't have to worry about pulling a hammy. I can get you a snack pack, right? I can get you something to eat. And he does. Watch what we then read down in verse 4. We're told this. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people will go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instruction. So basically, do you trust me? Do you believe I will care for you? I got you out of slavery through the Red Sea. Do you still trust me? And so the bread that they get, it was actually called manna, which literally means, what is it? Because this is what they want to know. What is this stuff? So they would go out every day and they would gather up these little flakes of bread that they would find, these flakes of manna, put them in a bowl, grind them up like to a powder, pour water in and kind of mix that up and make some type of mush. So that was their food. Or sometimes they would bake them into little cakes. So this is what God provided for them. And so they would come out and they would eat this manna, this mush, these cakes, whatever they made, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then the next day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then again the next day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Which, are you getting sick of it yet? Because listen, I promise, not as sick of it as they were getting. In fact, we read this over in the book of Numbers chapter 11. So this scenario, it's been playing out for a while. And then here's what we read, Numbers 11, verse 4. It says this, the rabble with them began to crave other food. And again, the Israelites started wailing and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost. I mean, you were slaves, but I guess they did give you free food. Also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. Which, man, right? We have such short-sighted memory and such a limited perspective. And again, so oftentimes we think that nothing really grows in the desert, but we see this. The desert is fertile soil for complaint, right? And you can just like hear them now where they're going, we are sick of this. We are so tired of this. Like, God, I am very disappointed with you right now. Like you made universes. I thought that you could do a better menu offer, whatever. And so here's what I think. Our tendency and then our temptation becomes to want to look down on them and to judge them rather than try to identify with them in this moment, which then that doesn't help us transform and become better whenever we go through the desert. Because they're like, oh, I can't believe these guys. God brings them out of slavery and then through the Red Sea. And this is how they act, right? This is how they respond. Ridiculous. Okay, really? Have you ever had to eat the same meal over and over and over and over again? Maybe in a financial shortage, maybe for some other reason, for some season. I remember this. I remember going for 2 weeks on a mission trip to West Africa. And listen, I've got a weak stomach. I also am a very picky eater. Like, I know, I got a really lame palate. I just do. So most of the food that they had over there, I couldn't eat it, and I wouldn't eat it. So like, I'm moving it around on my plate, like just stirring it and moving it, feeding the dog when no one's watching. I know, like a junior high kid. Hey, listen, I'm not justifying it. I'm just telling you that's what I did. Again, we say it's a place where it's okay to not be okay. So I'm the chief of sinners, and I'm not okay. But here's what I did. I brought a bunch of protein bars and beef jerky. So for 2 weeks, man, morning, noon, and night. Morning, noon, and night. All day, every day, I'm eating beef jerky and protein bars. 2 weeks. So when I get back home to the States, guess what I did not want to eat for the next 2 years, right? So I think rather than go, oh, those idiots, how could they do that? I would never do something like that. I think it's way healthier if we lean in and identify and say, man, you know what? Given the right set of circumstances, I'm in that same boat, right? Because we all are at times. And that just helps us recognize it and see those things more clearly. Maybe to even realize you're in a boat like that right now. So that in the middle of the pandemic, in the middle of the trial of leaving or losing the job on journey to the next one, in the middle of the relocation, in the middle of going through the treatments or the relationship ending, okay, it can feel very dry and very difficult and very wearying and very confusing. And it's really easy for complaint or grumbling or loss of gratitude or the loss of confidence or even loss of hope in God to set in. And then all of a sudden the mess in the middle becomes messier, right? And so that the grumbling and complaining oftentimes just amplifies or prolongs the desert season. Because we read in Numbers chapter 14 that God's people keep grumbling and they keep complaining and they keep griping and they keep whining until an entire generation dies off and they do not get to go into the promised land. Hey, listen, I'm not saying they didn't get to go to heaven, but their time on earth, it just became this prolonged desert season for them, right? 40 years of just take another lap and then take another lap and then take another lap, stuck in the middle, right? Staying in the desert until an entire generation dies off and then the next generation gets to go in. So the danger then, when we go through the desert, is that it becomes fertile soil for complaint, for separation from God, from just getting stuck and grumbling. The good news and the benefit is that the desert can also be fertile soil for transformational growth and for us to grow stronger and closer to God. Right? So we talked about what we want to avoid in the middle, right? This detour that we for sure do not want to get stuck on. Okay, but now let me show you the opportunity that we want to seize in that. The thing that it's not easy, but the payoff and the potential for that is just priceless. And so here's what we read. Now we're going to go over into the New Testament where Jesus' little brother, James, his brother, gives us some invaluable insight of how to navigate the middle, navigate the detour, and come through the desert well. And here's what James writes. James chapter 1, verse 2. He says this, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds." Right? And listen, he doesn't say if, he says whenever You face them. So listen, you can't pray them away. You can't obey them away. You can't faith them away. You can't good behavior them away. Like, trials are coming. The mess in the middle, the desert seasons we go through, we all get them, and we all have to go through those seasons. And so listen, and here's why. Because whenever sin entered into the world, it held the door wide open for pain and for disappointment and for sickness and disease and oppression and death and sorrow, all for those things to come walking through. And James is challenging us to reframe and to rethink how we go through the trial, right? How we manage the detour, how we come through the middle, and allow that to prepare us to go through the desert and be transformed rather than to complain and to become bitter or to fall into despair. To reframe the way that we think about that so that maybe you even find joy in the middle of that trial. And it may not be fun, I'm not saying happy, but there is a place that you could find joy. Here's what we read then in verse 3. James writes, "Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." So James is telling us, right, these trials that you go through, they are testing the authenticity of your faith. So they expose where it is you are really at, the depth and the maturity of your faith. So meaning this, whenever circumstances start to deteriorate, so does the counterfeit, right? So does the what's in it for me type stuff. And so James is saying, whenever you face these trials, because they are for sure coming, you discover some things about you, right? I find out some things about my faith, and I ultimately discover some things about God. And then James says this, and I don't love this part, but I'm telling you, I'm trying to believe it. He writes this, verse 4, "Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Right? So all in favor of becoming the complete you God has created you to be and lacking nothing, right? Complete you. Right? It sounds awesome, except for the path to get there. And here's what James is telling us. He's saying, listen, do not pull up lame, right? And don't bail out and don't quit the race early, right? I know it's hard sometimes in the middle. When you're walking through the difficult season, it can be a lot. And he's saying, listen, let the perseverance in there finish its work. And I know it's a lot. I'm not even telling you that I fully understand it all, but James is letting us know that thing that we oftentimes we want it removed from our life, it's the thing that God has chosen to use. So, we want to take away, the thing we're praying for prayer to get us out of quickly, that we want to fast track through, the thing we're grumbling about, the thing we want relief from, that oftentimes until God chooses to remove it in your life, it's the thing God has chosen to use in your life. And so, listen, for sure, God was preparing the Israelites to trust Him, right? You're coming from slavery, but the promised land, there's going to be challenges, and there's going to be obstacles, and there's going to be all kinds of things. Will you trust me? And they bail out, and they back out, and they give up too early, and it just prolonged the desert season for many of them for their entire life. And is it not true that the thing that we think we want changed in our life, right? The season that we want to get out of, that thing has our undivided attention, right? So coronavirus and global pandemic, the divorce papers you didn't see coming, the economic downturn, the loss of a job, the positive tests that come back. Perhaps you haven't prayed in years, and now all of a sudden you find yourself praying hard. Why? Because trials exercise our faith. And when you persevere in those, you become stronger and you become transformed and more complete. So James is saying, listen, don't shortchange the process, don't bail out, and don't stop believing. And then he says this. We read this. He says, again, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete. Okay, and literally what that means, he's saying, let perseverance complete its work in you, right? So stay there. Let perseverance complete its work so that you will become complete, right? Ask God to use that thing that you're in until God or life chooses to remove that thing that you're in. And then we read this in verse 5. James says this, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. So meaning, if you come into the middle of the desert and you're going, I don't get this, man. I don't understand this. I am so confused right now. Okay, James is saying, listen, ask God and he wants to help, right? He's not telling you to guess, figure it out on your own. He wants to help you. Here's the challenge for me. And again, I'll just make this about me. You can wrestle with you. The challenge for me is that whenever I go through really tough, hard seasons, I don't tend to want wisdom, man. I just want relief, right? I don't tend to start with, hey, God, would you grow me? Would you help me understand this thing? Would you do a good work on me? I tend to just go, get me out of this now, right? So I don't usually open up with, hey, transform me, but rather fix it. And James is saying that whenever you ask God for wisdom in the trial, in the middle, in the struggle, that's a prayer that he will always answer. You're always going to get a yes on that request, right? So God, help me to see the way you see this thing we're going through. Help me to understand how you would use it for your ultimate glory and for my ultimate joy. Help me to have eyes to see the friends, to see the marriage, to see the relationship, to see the work situation, to see the global, national situation, the way you want me to see them, respond to them, grow in them, trust them. God, give me wisdom to see the way you see. And listen, as you do, as you manage the middle, as you trust God through the desert, you will for sure become more complete and you will grow stronger. But where you run out, where you bail out, where you grumble, where you give up, then whatever it is that God's trying to use that moment to do in you, oftentimes it gets delayed or it might get derailed altogether. And then the detour becomes the lifestyle that becomes the really sad story and ending. Listen, that is not what God has got for you. He has good plans to complete you so that you're lacking nothing. So stick with it. The God that's good in the beginning and end is faithful in the middle. And listen, if you are checking in with us today and you've never made that decision to cross the line of faith and follow Jesus, to have a Savior that would love to give you wisdom and walk with you through the middle, you can do that today, just by going to our website and clicking on the link for Accept Jesus. And we would love to help you take that next step and follow up with you and start that part of your journey as well. Maybe the best decision that you will ever make. So thank you for being with us. Next week, we continue our journey off the map and we talk about the shortcut. That is going to be a fantastic message that is so helpful. Plan on coming back. Invite a friend. Love you guys. See you then.